Welcome to our program, and in addition to our painting lessons, we're also going to start interviewing some local artists in our area to see how they come up with their creativity and how they paint. And so we're going to have them on art and imagination. Anything that you can imagine, you can draw. Let's go to the studio. Hi, come on in. We're going to be working on our still life today, like we've started. I've wet down my canvas here a bit, and to smooth out some of the colors and everything. So we'll be doing that, and as you can see in the background, that we have the color wheel this week. So you can see the colors that I've got on the painting here is just basically from the color wheel, and you want to color coordinate all your colors on your drawings or whatever, or on your paintings after you've drawn it. But you got to keep it color coordinated, just like if you were putting on your clothes, you want it to be color coordinated. So, and I had to laugh this morning. Somebody came up to me and says, that is going to look a little more realistic, isn't it? And I said, yes, it will, but watercolor is done in stages. It's like stacking stacking paper or boxes, whatever. There's the first layer, then the second layer, then the third layer, and however many layers you have to go to get it start looking real. So even we've got everything's rough on this canvas, and it works on paper also. So if you're working on paper, watercolor paper, 300 pounds, 450 pounds, that's good. I had to laugh when I started a class one time that I gave them what they needed, and I said, get about a 300-pound paper. And the girl calls me back and she says, 300 pounds? I have to get 300 pounds of paper? I had to laugh. And I said, no, that's the milligram of the paper that you want. You don't want anything less than a 300 pound. They have 90 pounds and up to 100 pounds and whatever. 450 is a good one too. It just means that the paper is even stronger. It's less flexible, that's what it is. The 90-pound you use for either cards or nice little pictures that you're going to put in a frame. But I had to laugh at that. I've never forgotten, and I forget her name. But that's all past. But however, now we're working into the future. And let's get started with all this water, and I'm smoothing it out on the canvas right now. I started it already, so I'm kind of just putting clear water and smoothing out everything on the canvas. And it's okay if you get a little water into this onion. But the paint that we have on here is going to be like the first layers of this, and we'll smooth it out. A lot of the painting is with water, and after you get some paint on your paper or canvas, and you smooth it out. I didn't like it as hard lined. This is called a hard line right here, and it's very hard. But the more water you put on it, the smoother that it gets. But I try to be careful because it is movable, all this paint. So anybody says you can't fix a watercolor well, they just don't know, because you can. As you can see, I'm moving the paint over this green here, because that leaf will come out there when we're starting to do our detail. But every painting starts like this, in layers. I don't care if it's oil or acrylic, watercolor, or gouache, as we call it. You work in layers. And watercolor, although it dries fast, it takes a lot of time to do a watercolor. And everybody says, well, oil, it takes so long to dry. Well, that's true because it's a whole different medium. Let's kind of fix this squash up a bit here. Now, as you can see, well, at least I can see anyway, I've got to make it darker here. This is in shadow because the light's coming straight down or from the top of the canvas here. So the shadows will all be coming on this side from the fruit. So that's a very important thing that you've got to do also is to make sure you know where your shadows are and how your subject is sitting on your canvas or whatever that you have put on. So if the light's coming from here this way, then this squash is rounded, so therefore it will have a shadow under it. Now with the dark colors and shadows, it takes a lot longer to get those shadows in there. So I'm using a kind of a black wash here to define my shadows again. And this is a very important part of your painting, is your shadows. Light's coming this way, so this onion sitting here is standing up, so we'll have to put a shadow in here. I want to define my shadows again before I lose them in a sense. So over here, this onion's going to be shadowed this way. There will be light in through here. And the more you can shadow this darker and darker each time, I let it dry first. Then I go back and do another layer with more pigment on it, with more watercolor. The paint is the pigment. So now that kind of looks a little bit better with the shadows. So I'll let those dry. I need a little more on this onion over here. Prefer to have him a little bit darker. You know, anything that you can imagine, you can definitely paint and draw. I'm a firm believer of that. Just take my shirt, for example. I visioned a horse, and I've got a horse now on this shirt, as you can see. And that took many layers to get that horse on this shirt because the shirt is dark and the horse is white. So it took a lot of layers at home just putting fabric paint, there's fabric paint too, on this shirt. I've done a lot of fabric paintings on people's jeans and so on and so forth. And that's always fun. So you can paint on anything that you want, wood, tin, you name it, you can do it. And you can definitely imagine it all, that's for sure. So I wanted a horse on my shirt, so I put a horse on my shirt. Over the weekend I had been invited to, I'm also a clown. I have a clown suit that I use in painting the children's faces and adults if they want it. I'm going to pull that shadow out a little bit more. And in here it's going to be extremely dark when we get done. So the light's coming this way. This back here may have a little bit of shadow too. So let's go ahead and put it on there. Okay, as this dries, and see this is a hard line right through there. So I'll have to, when I get done with the shadows, I will be pulling this kind of out into this tabletop. And I kind of straightened up this tabletop while I was waiting here to talk to y'all and show you what I do and how I do it. And I'm hoping that you're enjoying the program. If you do, let us know. Kind of got wobbly here when I was doing this edge here, didn't I? But see how you can fix that. It's so easy. It just takes a little patience, and you have to be patient with yourself whenever you're just beginning to do watercolor or any kind of painting or drawing. Be patient with yourself. Nobody's perfect. Mistakes are made, but there's no mistake you can't fix. So remember that. I didn't know if I was still going to put a rug underneath this, because this comes from creativity and imagination. What am I going to do with all this negative spacing through here? So I haven't figured that out yet. But you'll be the first to know. If you're following me, that will be great. But if you want something different in your imagination, that will be great. I want you to be creative. Like I said, there are no mistakes. And none of us are perfect. See, just cleaning it up just kind of helps the whole picture. And basically, most of it's done with just plain water. See how that can flow into there? You can bring that paint in there so easy. That's dried. These legs back here will be very, very dark. And we'll get to that whenever we get. But this will be the lighter section with the light coming from this way. And these will be light here on the edges of the fruit. Excuse me, vegetables. I'm usually doing fruit, but I thought vegetables would be more fun. And I just got my finger in the wet paint. Okay, I'm going to go back and do some more on the eggplant. And we're going to put the shadows in on the vegetables now, while this other shadows are drying. And I hope I can keep my fingers out of it, because I do a lot with my little finger here with the guide. And so if the light's coming from above or from the top here, then the bottom of this eggplant's really going to be dark. And they're pretty dark anyway, normally. If you get a light one, that's not a good one. And there's a lot of purple into this. A lot of dark purple. So already you can see how that's standing out. So the eggplant is like that. It's got a big bell at the end of its neck. I'm assuming that this is called the neck. Keep my finger out of there. So I'm going to darken this side. And notice that I'm not going just straight up and down. This eggplant's growing like this into a bell and so on and so forth. So we got to make it look round. And that's a fact, as a detective says. That's the fact, ma'am. So I do my stroking the way that the eggplant has grown. And that big light part at the top is the highlight of a light coming on top. So, like I said, it takes patience, you know. Remember the old joke, it's like watching paint dry? Well, that's kind of like this is, watching paint dry as you layer and layer and layer it. as you can see, as I stroke along, I'm losing the pigment of the purple. So I just tap a little bit more and push it harder on my brush, and the paint will fall down. Okay. So I'm letting that paint sit there. So I'm going into a lighter color, but I'm not, you don't use white in watercolor. If you're in a contest or you're in a, I will say a contest from one of the galleries, they have contests. And so they have judges. So if a judge is looking at your watercolor, they're going to be looking for the whiteness, like in through here, from letting your paint show, or the paper or the canvas show. Pardon me. I'm having too much fun here painting. It's kind of hard to talk and paint at the same time. Now, when I paint at home, in my home studio, I have some classical music on, and boy, does it produce nice stuff. Okay, we're going to let that dry. Now I'm going to put a little bit more dark down in through here. And when you're, like I've told you before, when you are creating your design, your composition, which this is what this is called, is this composition, you want to keep it like in a diamond shape, like I have here on the table. But you want your viewers to look into this diamond from the top to the side, and it will help them to really like your painting. And it helps your composition too. A little more dark in through there. Okay, I think that'll be, we'll let that dry. Now let's go on to this onion down here. Again, we got the shadow this side of the onion. But as you see, the skin of the onion has come off, and this is the white onion under here. So I will have to make that white a little bit deeper here on the edge because the light's coming from up here. So, and if you forget where your light's coming from, what I normally do on my canvas or my paper or whatever, I will put a little arrow up here. Just a reminder that the light's coming from this way. And that way you won't forget, because your eyes are right on the top of this canvas. So up in here you put your marking where your light's coming from, and that will help you to know which side you have to darken and so on and so forth. But if you have shadows underneath your vegetables like I do, that's one reason why I put them in there pretty quick, because yes, it's a hard line right now, but they're drying. But that dark line, that hard line that I was talking about, won't be there once we start with the tabletop. But right now we want to kind of finish this, not finish because it's going to take a while. So I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of burnt sienna. I'm going to mix those two together to make a little darker skin on that onion. And of course, what I've got on my palette that I'm mixing here, and I never hardly clean my palette for watercolor because I can always use the colors that I've had in there before. So I'm going to get some more of that now. And let's see how this is going to look. So the light's coming from there. So this part of the onion is going to be light, and this part's going to be dark. So I go from the edge, and I'm pushing up to the side of my brush. And yeah, Now it looks a little dirty right now, but it's not dark enough. I think I'll make it a little bit more sienna in there. Well, that's not quite right either, that I can see on the palette. So I'll just mix a little bit more, but with a little bit more burnt sienna. I use burnt sienna a lot because I do a lot of Western paintings, and a lot of the landscapes are, or even animals and stuff. Pots are burnt sienna. And in order to have light, you got to have the dark. So I'm going to put this dark on this side up to the point of where my shadow begins, underneath the onion. So now I'm going to kind of curve it with my brush strokes. Put it in there. Don't be afraid. Go on. It's okay. It'll come out good. And every painting that you do, it's going to be really ugly before you get to the end. I know I've had people watch me many times. I like people watching me paint and the questions that I get from them. It's absolutely fantastic what they ask. A lot of it is, how do you begin? Well, you begin by having a teacher tell you how to do it or show you how to do it. And you go from there. You get your equipment together and sit down with your tea or coffee and just enjoy your hour or half an hour with whomever. But it's a fun thing to do, whether you feel like it's good. And no painter is ever, pardon me, is never satisfied with their painting. I can tell you, I've talked to many artists. Plus the froggy that I got in my throat. I'm going to make this a little bit darker over here. It's really too wet to work now because I got too much water in it. Not too much, but it's got to dry first. But I wanted to get an edge on that edge here, like that dark sienna part right there. So I hope you're enjoying this day. Okay, I got to go up to the other onion and do the same thing. And this is a most relaxing, I mean, when I'm painting, I'm at my relaxed best. Everybody says, well, aren't you best relaxed? I said, no, I'm relaxed best in painting. So I'm going to get it dark again. Okay, I can see the lines on my onion skin. You know, you maybe can't see it on camera, but I can sure see it. So I'm going to start at the edge. And I'm going to work down to the shadow line. Now see, I've started this one different. I don't have that much water on my skin there. So it looks a little bit harder. But by the time I've done, it will look like it's been watercolored. And that's another thing people look for in a watercolor is your edges and how well you've done your edges and your shadows. As you can see, I'm pulling those up the way that this onion is grown. Now, this is just this one I put on wet, this one I put on dry, because I wanted to show you what you can do. You can do it either way. But I go back in there and I put water with this pigment and I let it kind of run a little bit. So there's two ways of painting, the wet kind or the dry kind. As you can see, I like that just melding into there, that water just pushing that color right around. And a lot of people say, that's watercolory look. And I say, yeah. But there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. I hope I can show you everything. And I hope you're taping the program, because then you'll have it with you when you sit down to paint at home. Okay, I'm going to go up here, and it's going to be lighter in through here because the light's coming from there. It's going to be light over here too, but we got to make a difference between the skin and the onion. So you have to have dark with light in order for it to all show up and to look like it's going to be 3D in a sense. So we got to still, well, the light's coming from there, so that'll be totally light. This over here might be a little bit darker, but not as dark as back in here. And we want to make a difference between the squash and the onion too. So I put some pigment in there, and let's see what happens when I put the water in there. We want to make a pretty onion. Now up here on the top is where the stalk used to be, right in through here. So I'm going to go ahead and make the difference between that. And I'm going to do a little bit of brown in that with a little bit of black on this side of the core, you might call it. Just to make a difference in the color so you can tell where it's at. And I sometimes just dabble it on there. This is what I call dabbling. Push that out. Now I'm going to take my cloth here, or my paper towel, and I'm going to kind of blot that because I don't particularly like it. But I like what is left there. So I want more brown than I do black. So put that darker brown in there. And we're just going to make that little round stalk. So anyway, I hope you enjoy Art and Imagination with Janna, because I sure enjoy teaching you these things. So I'm hoping you'll join us again next time. And we'll do more on our painting here. And we want to really appreciate the crew here because they are just fabulous. So I want to give them a shout out for sure, because they're just great. And they're very patient with me too. So patience is in everything. Don't you agree? So anyway, come back again to Art and Imagination at the Bella Vista Community TV station. And I'll be here. I drank my coffee already, so I can't drink coffee with you, but it's really nice. Bye. See you later. You can do it. Remember, anything that you can imagine, you can draw. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.